What is going on today, everybody? It's Buddy, and in this video I'm going to show you guys how I took this old and neglected Lexus with a whole bunch of cosmetic issues and turned it into thousands of dollars of profit. And if you're new to the channel, my name is Buddy and I buy and sell cars for a living full time, and I'm about to show you guys my whole process on how I buy and sell cars and make money doing it. Now I'm going to show you guys how much I knew I should buy this car for, how much I knew I could sell it for, how much money I had to put into it, and ultimately how much money I made. So without further ado, let's jump right into the video. So I was at my Sunday family dinner and my phone dinged with a notification from SWOOPA alerting me of a new potential deal on Facebook Marketplace. It was a 2010 Lexus LX 460 with 109,000 miles for only $9,000. Now this is not insanely underpriced, but I do know that these Lexuses sell pretty fast since they're pretty much a luxury Toyota, and I knew if I could negotiate a little bit, I could possibly get this thing for a steal. So I clicked on the ad to go through the pictures and see what was up with this Lexus and see if it had any problems. So the exterior pics looked good. You couldn't really tell the condition of the paint since the car looked to be really dirty. There was no noticeable dings or dents or anything that stuck out. Now, one thing I did notice on these exterior pictures is that the chrome on the rims looked to be delaminating. Now, that's really common on like a 15-year-old car, so it's not super surprising, but that's definitely a negotiation tactic I can use to get the price down. Now, the interior pictures look to tell a little different story. The driver's seat looked to be pretty beat up. It was ripped up in a few spots. It also looked really dirty in there, and I knew it was going to need a really good deep cleaning. There was also just some random pictures of what looked to be a close-up of the back seat. Not really sure why this was uploaded, but okay. So now it's time to check out the description and see what the story with this car was. The description stated, "No mechanical issues, runs great. Needs gone because health reason. Have original owner's manual to go with it." So the whole no mechanical issues part was great news, but I've also heard that story and found some mechanical issues later, so we'll have to see if that claim is true. Now, the next part is need gone because health reasons. So that's really good news for me. That's something you definitely want to see on an ad. That means they're definitely willing to negotiate and they won't be hard pressed to squeeze every penny out of this car. Now, the last part was having the original owner's manual. That's just really a completely unnecessary thing to put in the description. It's probably definitely an older gentleman who made this listing. So I checked the book value for this car and it looks like it was around $10,000 with these kind of miles. So I did a little cross reference here on Facebook Marketplace with these LS 460s, and they're listed above $10,000 I'm seeing. Well, the dealership has this one here. It's 121 miles on this one for $12,500, and this 98,000 mile one listed at $17,500, which is pretty crazy. Now, these LS 460s were pretty high-end luxury back in 2010, being the Lexus's flagship luxury sedan. So I figured I'd get at least $11,000 out of this thing easily, and it was practically a Toyota, so it wouldn't be hard to sell. So I went ahead and I messaged the seller and asked when a good time to see the car in person was. I did need to ask if he had any wiggle room on the price, which I always recommend you do, because the description already told me he needed it gone, so I knew he could at least move on the price a little bit. So we set up a time that worked for the both of us, and I set out to see the car in person. Now, while we're on the way to see the car, there's some things that you always need to bring with you, and one of those things is an OBD reader. I'll have a link to 3 OBD readers in the description at 3 different price points that you guys can go ahead and check out. Now, I've been buying and selling cars for years, and I think probably the most important thing for getting profitable flips is to get to the ads first. It's guaranteed that any car on Marketplace underpriced by a few $1,000s will be pending in literally minutes. So a tool I personally use for car dealers and pro flippers is an app called SWOOPA. It also shows you the estimated value of the car in the feed, so you can see at a glance if the price is a good deal, a bad deal, or even a steal. So they now have new AI filters that let you set your bot to only show underpriced cars and block obvious bad deals to save you a ton of time. You can use their AI evaluation tool to quickly check if a deal is worth it. It breaks down any issues and shows a potential profit margin. It even gives you strategy tips too. Now, once you've set up your bot, SWOOPA does the rest for you, searching Facebook Marketplace, OfferUp, Craigslist, and you can filter results by mileage, year, make, model, or just use the AI price filter and only see underpriced cars with a healthy profit margin. SWOOPA will continuously search Marketplace every minute and ping you with an alert when a deal is underpriced, and then you can message the seller first before the other 50 flippers in your areas hit them up. So you can either scroll on Marketplace all day or get notified instantly with the SWOOPA app. It costs money to use, but it's easily worth it, and you'll make that investment back tenfold. This app's not just for cars. It works for iPhones, couches, camera gear, pretty much anything you can flip and make a side hustle or a business out of. This is hands down the best company I've ever promoted. It's built by flippers for flippers. There's a link in the description, so go get the free trial and check it out. Now, after about about 15 minutes of driving, we finally arrived here at the seller's house. So upon arriving, the car did look pretty good from a little bit of a distance, but something I couldn't see in the pictures was this completely dry rotted and cracked PPF layer. Now PPF stands for paint protection film. This is not usually a horrible thing because removal of this is not too big of a deal, but since this has been on there for like 10 plus years, it was so dry rotted, it was cracked, and it was going to be an absolute nightmare to get off without damaging the paint. Now the paint in general did seem to have a lot of fading in some spots. This black paint may just seem really dirty in a lot of spots, but the clear coat was just really dull looking. But the clear coat wasn't peeling in any spots, so that's really good news. It needed a good solid buff to bring this thing back to life and bring this deep black paint out. Now something I didn't notice in the pictures is that these pieces of trim that ran from the hood all the way to the trunk were also wrapped in black vinyl. They were originally chrome, but someone decided to wrap it in black, and it was getting all torn up and had a lot of chrome showing, and it just didn't look that good. So this vinyl needed to be removed as well. Now taking a step back, you can see these rims looked absolutely terrible. The chrome coating was super ripped up on all four of these rims. This really isn't surprising to me since this thing is 15 years old. I already knew this was happening with the pictures, but definitely an eyesore that made this Lexus look a bit dated. Now other than those things, the exterior wasn't in terrible shape. Definitely some things that need to be addressed, but nothing too horrible. So now it's time to take a look at the interior, and I got a good look at that driver's seat that looked all beat up in the pictures. I already knew it was in bad shape from the pictures, and there was no surprise here. The back panel needed to be replaced. This little side bolster on the bottom part of the seat needed to be replaced. Everything was all shredded up. Now something I didn't notice in the picture was how beat up this center console lid was. Now I know a lot of people drive with their arm on it as a rest, and this thing definitely got worn down pretty bad, so that was something that needed to be addressed. Now the rest of the interior seemed to be in pretty decent shape. The only other thing I noticed was that the switch on the passenger side window was missing. Not a huge deal though. There was a good bit of places where the carpet was stained, but with a little bit of work, I think I can get all the stains out of this carpet and make this interior look beautiful. All in all, I was pretty happy with how the interior of this car looked. So now it's time to start this thing up and take it for around the block and see if that seller was being honest when he said in the listing that there was no mechanical issues. And to my surprise, he was actually right. This thing drove amazing. These LS 460s drive so smooth, and they really were top of the line luxury back 15 years ago. I was super happy with how the test drive went. Everything drove awesome. There was no suspension noise, there was no engine rattling, there was nothing that I could find. All the windows worked and everything was good, so I was really stoked about that. So at this point, I figured if I can get it a little bit lower than his asking price, I wouldn't have to do any engine work, just a bunch of cosmetic stuff, which is fine by me. I could clean this thing up and make a little money on it. So when I was completely done with my inspection, I walked with the seller and I said, now I know you have it listed for $9,000. It does need some TLC, so what are you willing to take if I were to take it off your driveway right now and you wouldn't have to look at it again? He started telling me how he can't drive anymore because of his back pain and he did need some money. This gentleman was very old. I do recall him saying that due to his health reasons, he would let it go for about $8,000. Now, I know just how the way he said it, I'd really like to get $8,000 for it. There was definitely some hesitation in his voice. He 100% would have gone lower if I would have pushed, but honestly, I kind of felt bad for the guy. I didn't want to hit him too hard and go down to like $7,000, even though he probably would have took it. I figured $8,000 wasn't a bad deal, and it was kind of like a win-win for both of us. So we shook hands on $8,000. The car is officially mine. It's time to get back to the house and get this thing all fixed up and ready for its new home. So while we're on the way driving back to the house, I did want to mention one topic of negotiation. I didn't do any hard negotiating with this guy because, like I said, I felt bad that he was selling it just because he had chronic pain. So I went easy on him, even though I probably could have got it lower. Now, I have 16 other car flipping videos before this one where I touch on negotiation in all of them. It's definitely worth taking a look at them, and if you haven't already, you should definitely subscribe because I have a lot more great content coming out in the topic of car flipping. So after a short drive, we finally arrived here back at the house, and now it was time to get this thing all prettied up so we can find it a new owner and make some money. Now, the first thing I want to do is attack these rims because these things look absolutely awful. So you guys know how I like to do it. I made up my checklist on everything that needs to be fixed up, so let's start knocking things out and get those rims looking good again. So obviously the first course of action was to jack the car up to get all four tires off the ground and remove the lug nuts to get all the wheels removed. From there, I laid them down in my front yard and I soaked all the wheels in a cleaning solution. I wanted to get as much brake dust off as possible just to make sure the job I'm doing is nice and clean, and after the solution sat for a minute, I sprayed it all off with the garden hose. Now, with all four wheels in the garage and dried up, it's time to prep them for paint. I used my wire wheel drill attachment to rip off all the old chrome coating. If I were to leave any half peeling chrome, then it would just peel off even with my new paint on top of it. So I really took my time and really grinded these wheels down to make sure that I got all the way down to the metal. Now that all the rims were wire wheeled and there's no more loose chrome finish, it's time to clean them off. And all four wheels got a good good wipe down with a microfiber cloth and some rubbing alcohol. Now that all the wheels were prepped, it's time to put some index cards between the tire and the rim, and that's going to make sure that we don't get any paint here on our tire. So now that the index cards are in place, I like to use this primer in particular because it lays down really flat. If you're not going to be doing any sanding after priming, this is a great primer to use. So I put down 2 coats of primer, the first coat being a thin coat and the second coat being a thicker coat. Now, after about 5 minutes of the primer curing, I took this specific paint that you can use just for rims. Now, this is a very durable paint. It is a little expensive at $13 a can, but it definitely works good. So I put 1 thin coat just like I did with the primer, and then the next coat I went a lot heavier to make sure I got a nice even finish on these rims. Now I have a full video on how to paint your rims that goes into much more detail than what I just showed. Now be sure to subscribe so you can remember to go back to the channel and take a look at that video. And as you can see, these rims look so much better. The finish came out absolutely awesome. Now with the rims painted, I want to make sure these things looked good when they went back on the car. I didn't want to use the same lug nuts because if you spray chrome or silver lug nuts black, they're going to rip off almost as soon as you put the socket on it. So I found the brand new set of black lug nuts on Amazon. They were only $30. These are going to have a nice black shiny finish to match the rims. So you can see now that everything was installed, these wheels looked absolutely amazing. It made such a huge difference just not having those ugly peeling wheels. The black actually sets off the black paint and this thing is looking super sleek already. So let's cross off painting the rims off the list and move on to the next thing on our list, and that is to get that cracked PPF off the car. But real quick, let's go ahead and start our money invested chart to start tracking how much money this project is going to cost us. So we have $8,000 for the price of the car, of course, 2 cans of paint at $13 each, plus the can of primer, so $35 in paint, and then $30 here for the price of the new lug nuts. So let's get back to that cracked paint protection film. Now, I tried soaking it with a little bit of adhesive remover. I tried putting some heat on it with my heat gun and peeling it off slowly, but really absolutely nothing worked. It was just so caked on for being dried up in the Florida sun for the last 10-15 years probably. So what I had to use was my rubber wheel remover drill attachment. Essentially what this does, it just attaches with the rubber and the rubber's a little sticky and it just rips it off. Now a lot of times this is not a necessary step. You can just hit it with some heat. You can soften it up with some adhesive remover and then go back with the heat again. But this stuff was so dry rotted, it was pretty much bonded to the paint. There was no other way for me to get this off besides this. It is a super messy way to get it off, super labor intensive. And now when I say this took me a solid hour and a half, maybe 2 hours of just going full force at this paint film, my arms were burning. This was an absolute nightmare, just like I thought it would be. I had to take multiple breaks. It was not fun. Now, after all that work, the rubber kind of bonded to the adhesive film and it left a lot of chunks all over the place. So at this point, I had to take a rag completely soaked with adhesive remover. I got in there and I scrubbed and I scrubbed and I scrubbed till I got all the remaining adhesive off. Now, I know this is definitely something that I should have been using gloves, but I could not find them. And I really just wanted to finish this step because it was the last exhausting thing to do at this point. So I repeated this process maybe 5 or 6 times to make sure I got all the adhesive off. And then I had to go back with my fingernail and pick off all the little spots. And now when I tell you this is one of the worst things I had to do probably all month, I really mean it. This was not fun. But after some serious elbow grease, I finally got the rest of the adhesive off, and you can see how nicely this PPF film actually preserved the paint. It was super shiny under here, so we're going to get to that step later and how to fix that. So let's go ahead and cross off removing the PPF film off the list and move on. Now it's time to remove that black vinyl off this trim that I showed you before. This chrome stuck out like a sore thumb, and since it was worn out in so many different places, it definitely needed to be fixed. I could not leave it like this. So the first thing I did was I took my heat gun and applied some heat to the area to see if I can soften up the vinyl. Now, this was kind of working, but it was working very, very slowly. And I can tell this vinyl was also super dry rotted. It probably went on the same time as this PPF film. It was just not coming off. Because honestly, vinyl, you should be able to just peel it off fairly easy. So after I gave up on applying heat and burning my finger a few times, I got my rubber adhesive remover wheel off. I started ripping this vinyl off. Now the problem with this is that I had to be so aggressive because this vinyl was so dry rotted that it was starting to eat away at the chrome finish. So I couldn't really keep doing this and leave the chrome nice. So at this point, I just got my trim removal tools and I just pulled this piece of chrome finish all the way off. I could not do anything about it. I just had to do it and paint it the right way. So the next day, I sanded everything down with some 400 grit sandpaper to make sure I got good adhesion when I laid down some paint. And after it was all sanded down, I went ahead again and used rubbing alcohol. I wiped the surface down and got all the dust off. So I popped the trim pieces down on some step ladders that I had so they weren't laying on the ground. And I started off the same way I started the rims, and that was a very thin coat of primer. I laid down the second coat of primer a little bit thicker, and after a few minutes of the primer curing, I laid down the paint. I went ahead and just painted it black just to match the wheels. I used the last bit of paint that was in the can that I used to paint the rims, and after it dried up, this thing was definitely a lot nicer looking clean than that peeling chrome look. So 24 hours after it finally cured, to make sure I didn't leave any fingerprints in the paint when reassembling it, I laid down these nice long pieces of trim. I smacked them down with my palm at all the attachment points, and it laid down beautifully. So we can go ahead and we can cross off fixing the trim off the list and move on to the next thing, and that was to buff this paint. So I know I talked about drill attachments a lot in this video already, with the rubber wheel attachment and with the wire wheel attachments, but another drill attachment that I always use is a buffing pad drill attachment. This black paint is super faded. You can really tell when I took off that PPF, like I showed you before, it was super faded. So I just use a medium grit rubbing compound, and I like to do one panel at a time. The goal is to get the clear coat back to life, get that kind of hazy look off, get all the light scratches off, but don't try and go too much, because you'll end up eating the clear coat and you'll just end up ruining the entire paint job. So you can always start slowly. You can always buff the car more, but you can't unbuff the car. Now you can really see here I buffed half the hood. It makes a huge difference, especially in these darker cars. You can see now I got the actual hood paint matching with the paint that was under the PPF film, so the hood doesn't look silly anymore. So I continued buffing the car for a while, and you can see after, this thing looks absolutely amazing. My favorite car color to buff is black, because it really brings out that super deep rich black paint. The exterior of this car looks so much nicer now. The only thing left with this exterior that looks a little bit raggedy are these faded headlights. So let's go ahead and cross off buffing the car off the list, and let's go ahead and hit these headlights and make them look good again. So now, lucky for you guys, I have an entire long form video on how to professionally restore your headlights, and it's the exact method that I use with every car that I've ever flipped. So what I'm doing here is the last step, and that's the final polish. Now I also use a buffing wheel attachment for this, but as you can see, this buffing wheel is so much smaller than the other one. This is really convenient when you're doing headlights. Now I did one headlight and left the other headlight unrestored, so you can really see the difference, and this thing looks so much nicer. It is a night and day difference. So I did both headlights, and you can really see the difference this made in this exterior of this car. The exterior is officially done. The paint looks incredible. The headlights look literally brand new. All that PPF film was removed. The wheels look super sleek, and this thing just looks all around amazing. I'm super happy with how this thing is turning out. So let's cross off the headlights off the list, and now we're officially done with the exterior. It's time to work on the interior, and let's start here with that ripped up driver's seat. So we got to get this whole seat out to drop it off to the upholstery shop. So to remove a seat, there's going to be 2 bolts in the front and in the back. This is the same for pretty much every single car on the driver's seat and the passenger seat. So once the bolts are removed, it's time to remove all the wiring harnesses. This car actually had a lot of wiring harnesses since it has heated and ventilated seats. And once they are all removed, you can finally remove the seat. Some seats like this have a seatbelt attachment that also attaches to the seat, so that needs to come out, of course, as well. And of course, I got to get that center console out too, because that center console was super ugly looking. It was really chewed up by that dude's elbow. All I had to do was remove the AC vents in the back cabin of the car, and then there was 2 screws that were holding the center console in place, and I was able to just pop it off at that point. So now it was time to take all this stuff to the upholstery shop, and after a few days I picked it up, and it looked absolutely beautiful. They did a great job here, definitely a lot better looking than those huge rips. So let's go ahead and cross off reupholstering the seat off the list and move on to the next thing. So remember way back when I said the passenger seat window switch was broken? Well, luckily for me, I found the button that popped off in the glove box of this car, and after inspecting it, I realized it really wasn't broken at all. All the plastic was intact. It must have just popped up from somebody pulling on it too hard. So the first thing I did was take my trim removal tool, and I popped this whole wooden trim piece off that holds the window motor switch and the door locking switch. With that removed, I was able to remove both of the wiring harnesses so I can get a better look at what's going on. Then with a small flathead screwdriver, I moved the window switch module out. And then all I had to do at this point was line up the little button here, and I snapped it in place. And now all we have to do is plug everything back up, put it back together, and it was all fixed up. So let's cross off fixing the window motor switch off the list and move on to the last thing to do, and that was to wrap up this interior and give it a thorough detail. So anytime I detail a car, I like to remove all the seats. So the front seat was already removed since I had to take it to the upholstery shop. So all I had to do in the front of the car was remove the passenger seat, and I also wanted to remove the back seat so I can get in there and really get this thing detailed. Now with all the seats removed, you can see how much easier it is to get in there and deep clean these carpets. But first what we got to do is we have to vacuum up all the carpets. So we're going to use our vacuum first and vacuum this all up. I like to take about 15 minutes to do this alone, just to make sure that I don't get a bunch of stuff in my carpet cleaner, because that's the next step for this. So after we're all vacuumed up, I take some cleaner and my little handheld pump sprayer, and I soak the entire carpet with a generous amount of cleaner while focusing really good on those stain portions. I let it soak for about 5 minutes, and after 5 minutes is is up, I use a drill brush attachment to really work the cleaner in. Now, you can do this by hand with the regular brush, but the drill attachment really speeds up the process and it really works out all those stains super well. And once it's all worked in, I finish the job with my carpet cleaner. This thing sprays clean water in and it sucks out all the dirty water, all that years of built up dirt and stains, and it leaves the car with a nice fresh car smell. I also repeated this exact process on all the floor mats to make sure they looked as beautiful here as the carpet. So now it's time to work on these seats, and since these are leather, the process is a lot more simple, especially having them outside the car. It makes my life so much easier. So I just soak them here with the same cleaning solution and I scrub them down with a regular hand brush and then wipe them down with a microfiber cloth just to make sure I got all the dirt out of these seats. So now the seats were done, I gave this interior a nice wipe down, and now everything was said and done and all the seats were back inside. The interior of this car was looking absolutely amazing. It was all cleaned up. It smelled like a brand new car. There's no more holes in the seat. The center console lid is looking great again. Everything's looking like a brand new car, and I'm super happy with how the inside of this car came out. So now that the inside and the outside of this car was looking absolutely beautiful, we can go ahead and cross off the last thing on the list. We're gonna get some really good looking pictures of this thing and get it up for sale. So I ended up posting this thing on the upper limit of the Kelley Blue Book value, which was $11,500, and there's literally no mechanical issues at all with this car. All the cosmetic issues are pretty much gone. This thing really does look great inside and out, and it drives great. So of course, I'm gonna go ahead and ask for the upper end. Now, especially since dealers are asking $12,000 to $15,000 for this exact car, $11,500 is not too big of an ask. Now, it did sit for about a week with not much action. That's really common with any car being above $7,000, because most people with $7,000 in their pocket are gonna put $5,000 down on a new car. But it is a Lexus, which is pretty much, like I said, a luxury Toyota, so it wasn't too much over a week before I got someone who was really interested. Now, when they showed up, they weren't super excited about the car. They were going to look at another car, but you can tell right after the test drive, it changed their mind. If you ever driven a Lexus LS line, you would know what I'm talking about. These things feel like you're literally driving on a cloud. So what they did is they offered me $11,000, and I happily said yes, because I was actually willing to go down to $10,500 on this car. But $11,000 is even better. So that's why you always start low when you are buying something, because I would have took even less money. So now that the car is officially sold for $11,000, it's time to jump back to the money invested chart, and we're gonna add a few things. We have $175 for the reupholstering job and $100 that I gave my friend for helping me detail the car. And last but not least, we're gonna add another $100 for miscellaneous things like the little bit of gas I had to put in this Lexus, detailing products, the whole can of adhesive remover that I used to remove the PPF film, and anything else I might be forgetting. And with all this added up, it leaves us with a grand total amount invested in this car at $8,440. And with a sale price of $11,000, that leaves us with a total profit margin of $2,560. Not too shabby at all, especially for not having to do any engine work and doing all cosmetic work. So let's do a little more math together and see how much labor time we invested so we can get an hourly rate and see how much I made. So it took about 4 hours to prep and paint the rims, 3 hours to remove that PPF film, only about 1 hour to remove and paint that chrome trim, about 1 hour to buff the car, another hour to buff the headlights, only about 30 minutes to drive to the upholstery shop since it was super close. The window switch was super quick as well, so another 30 minutes for that. The detail took a solid 5 hours since we really took our time, and we'll add another 3 hours of miscellaneous things like drive time and any other stuff that I might be forgetting. Now, if we add all that up, it comes out to a total amount of labor invested of 19 hours. So we'll take the profit margin of $2,560. We're going to divide that by 19 hours of labor, and that comes out to a grand total of $134 an hour. That is not too bad at all, especially like, again, there was no mechanical issues. It was all just cosmetic. Now, I do all my own repairs, filming, editing, and everything in between. So make sure you guys press the like button on this video, leave a comment for the YouTube algorithm, and also a huge shout out to the SWOOPA app for being the official sponsor of this video. I'm telling you guys, this app is a game changer. I definitely recommend it to anybody who's looking to get into flipping of any kind. Now be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys on the next car flipping video.